My aim is to take Brighton to glory, doing it the Brighton way. I've been a huge fan of how they managed to sign fantastic players, sell them for profit, and already have a better replacement signed for a fraction of the price, all while still being competitive in the richest league in the world. So I made myself manager of the Seagulls, and look at my mustache, with the expectations of finishing mid-table and finishing higher than Crystal Palace. That should be easy.
Looking forward to it.
Thankfully, it is still Patrick Vieira in charge though, no Roy Hodgson. Brighton have a transfer budget, by the way, of £70 million, which I definitely forgot about when I wanted to do this save.
I don't believe you.
Before we spend that, I need to introduce myself to my current team, who are buzzing at finishing mid-table and are running the FA Cup. Easily pleased this lot. Speaking of which, let's see some of our key players. Moises Caicedo is a fantastic young midfielder who can hold the CDM slot with no problem. Of course, World Cup winner McAllister is a man we need to build the team around, as is 17-year-old Evan Ferguson, who needs game time from the off. And Matoma is a player who can win you a game when all looks lost. Those four players plus Robert Sanchez in goal, I'm looking to play a shape and style almost like this 4-3-3 with wide defensive wingers and inverted wing-backs, using Matoma more centrally in a Trecatista role. Dunk is our best centre-back, but we really need some big improvements going forward. So just like Brighton would do, we smartly signed Michael Edwards as Director of Football, formerly Liverpool's Director of Football, who was responsible for bringing in players like Virgil van Dijk and Mohamed Salah, as well as selling Coutinho for huge profits. So I asked him straight away, Michael, give me 3 player options we could sign at centre-back, and he came back with Tyrone Mings. So instead, I negotiated a deal with Zagreb for Josip Shatalo. The 22-year-old Croatian centre-back already looks fantastic and would be a great addition to our backline with his ball-carrying skills and composure. However, with the nature of the defensive wingers, it's better to put centre defensive midfielders there, so I asked Michael to help me once again, but the youngest option he presented was Tapia from Peru. But for me, Thuram from Nice is a better option and much younger. Michael's been pretty useless so far. I'm signing my own recommendations instead. Thuram is in the door for £21 million. And following him was Alex Scott from Bristol City, a midfielder who has been chased by my rival, so I got the deal done early. The deal for Thuram actually set a transfer record for Brighton, and it made me think, that's the last time I'm going to break the transfer record this series. £20 million is what I'm going to limit myself for signing a player from now on. Although Shatalo may also reach £21.5 million with add-ons, but from now on, I will not exceed £20 million. Injury hit as starting left-back Estupiñán tore muscles and is out for a few months. So I gave my mate Michael a knock-knock to see if he knows any cheap options at left-back. But no, they're all either above the age target or above £20 million like Parisi. But after a 10-second search, I found 2 cheap options. The first, unfortunately, wouldn't get a work permit from Peru, but the second from Sociedad would, and he's cheap as chips, and I managed to get a deal accepted for less than £5 million. Our star man is now injured though in another friendly match, right before our first match of the league campaign against Liverpool, and it's a Monday night game under the lights at Anfield. And it also wasn't the dream start I anticipated. I mean, Luis Diaz scored within 13 minutes, and then Trent Alexander-Arnold made it 2 from a direct free kick. We did score 1 goal, and it was a rather impressive one at that, but we did lose 7-1.
Sorry, what?
On the same points as Man City though, and I swear I seen Michael cheer when Liverpool scored the little snake. And if you think Michael is a little rat and you haven't subscribed yet, then please hit that red subscribe button, because these will be out once or twice a week and you don't want to miss out.
You really like the dark, don't you, Michael?
We got our first win in the following match with Evan Ferguson scoring the opener, and he continued to score more goals. Not just any goals either, absolute worldies. And by the end of the month against Arsenal, the lads were understanding their roles in this tactic more, and we looked a better team up until Bukayo Saka smashed in an equaliser. But Evan Ferguson is one of the best up-and-coming strikers in European football right now, and he bangs in his 4th and the winner in the 88th minute. And we're in the dizzy heights of 4th place.
Get in!
Window close, I think we did rather well off the pitch too. A draw to Leeds came next, but back-to-back braces for Ferguson and 3-0 wins for Brighton. A tough match against Spurs, and Pedro Porro bangs in a free kick. We mustered up an equaliser though, but it stayed 1-1. And another tough loss to City and Haaland next too. Then it was all down to Evan Ferguson, because he just continually kept scoring goals, and they were all decent goals too. Not something you'd expect from a 17-year-old with not a lot of experience. It's like when Rooney burst onto the scene and people were checking his passport as he seemed way older than he was. During this period, we even beat our rivals Palace at home thanks to Alex Scott's 90th minute winner. And then we welcomed Eric Ten Hag's Manchester United, and we went out there and played our absolute butts off. Ferguson scored the opener and followed up with a cracking second. Veltman rose highest from a corner, and in the second half, Thuram dinked De Gea, and we rounded off a 4-0 win.
No, this is outrageous!
Bopping us up into the top 4. We had 3 games before the World Cup break, and Everton became the next victims of our fantastic run when we beat them 2-0. And then Ferguson put 4 past Spurs in the EFL Cup, and then 3 past Villa in the league. And yet, just like that, we are trailing Man City in the league. Ferguson is trailing Haaland in the Golden Boot race with 18 goals in just 16 games. A reminder that he's only just turned 18. It may have only been in the Cup, but we've come a long way after losing to Liverpool 7-1 when we beat them 1-0 at Anfield. But after a couple more league wins, we are keeping our position in second place through the new year. After a great result against Brighton's former manager Graham Potter and his Chelsea side at Stamford Bridge, it was 2 successful cup ties, including a quarter-final against Middlesbrough, and on to a fantastic league win against West Ham, starting with a banger from Caicedo. Another 2 goals followed, and both of them weren't bad either, and all 3 goals came within the first 13 minutes of the match. And this is the start of a bad patch. We somehow lose 6-1 to Norwich in the first leg of the semi-final of the Carabao Cup, followed by an FA Cup draw to Middlesbrough, who we stuffed 3 weeks ago 3-0. Mitoma scored 2 fantastic goals from his Trecatista role in a 4-0 win in the second leg against Norwich, but we still find ourselves eliminated 6-5. And we welcome top of the league Man City next, and Erling Haaland says hello 8 minutes in. But we are fighting for top 4 this year, and we give as good as we got, and before you know it, after McAllister's first, Mitoma is putting in a second to take the lead. And man of the match, Thuram banged in a third, and suddenly eyes were opening wide. Phil Foden did score a second for City, but we leave the Amex as 3-2 winners. And great results followed in February with wins in the FA Cup replay and against both Tottenham away and Chelsea at home. And yes, that is Brighton sat in second place at the beginning of March. We then took Manchester United penalties, where we scored our 5th penalty and Sivert Mansverk missed theirs, and we are through. And then we faced Fulham in the quarterfinals and lost. And after a loss to Liverpool in the league, it's just the one competition we have left, and we are still fighting for Champions League football next year. And then we went on this awful run through April. Back with a bang, beating Man United 1-0 at Old Trafford though. Straight into a loss against bottom of the league. But it was Derby Day at Selhurst Park, and Evan Ferguson, our talisman, scores the opener. Second half, and Solly March bags a second, and the Brighton away end must be going mental. We did unfortunately give Palace some hope when Eze scored just 20 minutes remaining, but we managed to hold on. City are running away with the league, and we're second unlikely with the games in hand for Liverpool, but it's still in our hands for top 4. We took advantage through Shatalo at St James's Park, but Veltman went and got himself a straight red card with just 27 minutes in, and that was the turning point of the match. Newcastle then soon after equalised, and although we held on to the 70th minute, we unfortunately fell behind thanks to a dunk on goal, and Newcastle went on to win 4-1. We bounced back with a 2-0 win against Bournemouth thanks to an outrageous header by Ferguson, who scored his final 2 goals of an incredible debut campaign for us in our penultimate match against Leeds in a 3-1 victory. Our final game of the season, however, is against Arsenal, and a loss could see us drop out of the top 4. The nerves were at an all-time high, but Mitoma scored a rocket to put Brighton ahead just 13 minutes into the match, but with a fantastic movement, Arsenal's attack found Saka on the stroke of half-time to go in 1 apiece. And would you believe it, we held on all the way until the 90th minute before Eddie Nketiah scored a winner. But the team to capitalise on our loss also lost to West Ham. And Chelsea, who could have gone above us, also drew with Bournemouth, meaning we actually finish in 3rd place still. And we celebrate Champions League football next season, and Evan Ferguson, although being 15 goals behind Erling Haaland, still scored 31 this season. Some of the top performers were the players I highlighted at the start of the campaign, but we've got a job on our hands to recruit for next season. Speaking of which, here's Michael, the absolute fraud. You've got about £50 million to help me next year, buddy. So let's try this again, shall we? Let's search for a future centre-back who's good on the ball. Another player called Shatalo, I bet that took you a while to think of. Perez isn't a bad shout though, and then Tyrone Mings again.
Oh no, not again.
Our mission is to become successful with Brighton, doing it the Brighton way. Make sure we never break the transfer record again. No thanks to Michael Edwards, the bloody fraud. I mean, look at who he suggests when I ask for a defensive winger. Stuart Dallas. He's 32, Michael, and nowhere near ready for the Champions League. Oh yeah, we finished in 3rd place last season and qualified for the Champions League. And 18-year-old Evan Ferguson scored 43 goals in total. Our ugly Christmas tree tactic is working really well for us. Levi Colwill will leave the club and go back to Chelsea after his loan spell. And we had to sort out Caicedo's contract that he wants, where unfortunately we can't get rid of the minimum fee release clause. I was also alarmed by my team report. Weaknesses include the goalkeeper and the fact that nobody wants to work hard. And our scout report was full of trash. So I'd need to look for myself for future additions. Some weird transfers happened elsewhere though. Ilkay Gundogan moved from City to Liverpool for 20 million, and Kyle Walker-Peters from relegated Southampton to West Brom. I did check and they are coming into the Premier League as champions. I was shocked to see teams throw £5 million at us for terrible players in our squad, and £5 million for our backup striker who is very unhappy, so is moving to Werder Bremen. I was also shocked to see more transfers in the Premier League, with Newcastle signing Rafael Leao from AC Milan in the 2nd season without any Champions League football for 57 million up front and only 70 million in total. We signed somebody new though, Devon Wrench from Ajax for just £10.25 million, a fantastic young defender who fills so many positions for us. A really good squad player, swiftly followed by a young centre-back from Brazil, Ger, for just £3.5 million, maybe one for the future, or just for profit. But the best signing so far for us was David Pereira da Costa from Lens. We don't necessarily need an attacking midfielder, but he was way too good to turn down for only £15.25 million. And on the same day, he dislocated his shoulder playing for Portugal and is out for 2 to 3 months. We still have roughly £20 million left, so we could be bringing in more signings soon. Van Heck is back from his long spell at West Brom, and I think he could be a good first-team player for us. We sat Evan Ferguson down and got him to sign a new contract with no release clause included for another 5 years. But we did say goodbye to Adam Webster, who we shipped off for nearly £10 million.
This is only goodbye for now.
First game of the season is here against West Ham, and we got an early penalty, and World Cup winner McAllister stepped up and somehow puts it
bloody missed it.
But I think it's fair to say that he redeemed himself, scoring just 2 minutes later and giving us the lead, and in the second half when the ball dropped to him again, another fantastic finish. We were missing Caicedo, March and Acosta, and yet Ferguson still opened the scoring at Stamford Bridge. Chilwell did put Chelsea back level before half time, but a hopeful ball found Zakiri, who waltzed through like he was invisible and dinked the goalkeeper. But in the 89th minute, Cucurella put in an unbelievable cross for Horta to end the game at 2-2. The worst part of it is that Evan Ferguson picked up an injury and will miss some upcoming games, right before the derby against Palace at home as well. A positive though is how much Alex Scott has developed in the last year. I went to Michael's office again to see if he had any striker suggestions, and he gave us 3 very questionable options, including Gomez, who had offers from Man United and Inter Milan already. But I found a player who would be a great option for that striker hole that we are missing. For now though, with Ferguson's injury, Zakiri takes his spot after his goal in the last match. And with many players now missing, Palace was probably the worst team for us to face, as they gave them the lead in the first half and Zaha finished us off in the second in the 75th minute. Anyway, moving on, let me introduce you to our new striker, Marcus Leonardo, a wonderful 20-year-old striker who will give us so much squad depth now for 2 games a week in Europe and in the league, rotating with Ferguson. And for just £14.5 million too. I very quickly changed the side for the next match against Brentford, bringing in Caicedo, Wrench and Marcus Leonardo. But we only picked up a draw. But it's now time to find out our Champions League group. An exciting moment for Brighton and Hove Albion. And of course, we are in the 4th pot for the draw, so we'll be breezing through the draw while we see which group we are in. Now, we couldn't be in Group A because of Liverpool, we avoided Group B with Real Madrid, and we are drafted into Group C with Porto, Inter Milan and Copenhagen. Overall, I think that I am happy and we avoided the group of death with Bayern Munich and Barcelona. Failure to prepare is preparing to fail though, and I'm even setting out my training sessions for the 2 match weeks. After beating Norwich comfortably, we lost to Liverpool and I blame the goalkeeper. And it was into our Champions League game against Copenhagen, and Evan Ferguson is the man to score our first goal in the competition. There were a lot of standout performances in this match though. Kefren Turan was outstanding, breaking up play and even getting an assist. Evan Ferguson ended the night with a hat-trick on his Champions League debut. We did let Copenhagen back into the match though, and even gave a penalty away in the dying seconds of the match, but we still won 3-2. Marcus Leonardo got his first goal for the club, unintentionally might I add, off of Thuram's shot against Fulham, in a game that we lost 3-2, which was the start of a bad run of 3 games with 2 losses to Man United at home, before travelling to Italy and beating Inter Milan 1-0, which was a much better result than what we got facing Porto in Portugal. We hammered them really. We had 26 shots and 10 on target, but they still went away with a 3-2 win, taking all 3 points. But that came in between a 3-game winning streak in the league, and Marcus Leonardo has found the net twice in that run as well. We are already 9 points behind top of the league and 5 points from the top 4. But hey, we are top of our Champions League group. Well, up until we drew with Porto, and then lost to Inter Milan at home in the 90th minute. We are a little bit inconsistent in the league, but picking up more wins than anything else and getting lucky. But in our final Champions League group match, we put in a 5-star performance, scoring 5 goals. Da Costa got the opener on the half-hour mark, and the floodgates opened in the second half. Marcus Leonardo was having a great time, scoring his first hat-trick in Europe on the biggest stage of all, as well as Alex Scott netting the 5th and final goal. It still wasn't enough to send us through to the knockouts, but we had the Europa League instead, where we will face Young Boys in the knockout playoff match. Unfortunately, league results started to get worse as well. It was a strange month as we lost to City 1-0 in an unlucky fashion. Got beat for the 3rd time already this season by 10-man Man United from a 95th minute Jadon Sancho hat-trick, whilst beating Arsenal 1-0 in a very lucky way you might say, and then beating Tottenham 3-2 thanks to a 91st minute winner.
Sometimes it may be good, sometimes it may be shit.
Guessing where we would be in the league could be anywhere, but we are 7th for now. There are those back-to-back draws again. It is January, and I have accepted a bid for Veltman. So guess who we need to speak to about a replacement? And I swear to God, he better not suggest Mings again. Is he serious? Eric Dyer. Really, Michael? The tutor option is not a bad one in all honesty, but still. Anyway, Spurs battered us.
I did not see that coming.
On to the Chelsea match then instead, and Evan Ferguson scores in the 1st minute. Lovely. But no, Kai Havertz brings Chelsea level, but a corner to the back post is smashed in by Van Heck, and we take all 3 points. I decided not to sign anybody, by the way. Michael's fault. Wait a minute. Vieira's at Arsenal. What the hell happened to Arteta? He's unemployed. Oh, Mikel. I wonder if he's any better at a director of football role. Anyway, Evan Ferguson is at it again, scoring this outrageous header just 22 seconds in. He also scored another in this 6-2 first leg win against Young Boys. Into the quarterfinals of the FA Cup as well with this win, but look at this. Man City visited the Amex and scored within 6 minutes. On to the second half, and that is Steven Alzate in one of his first games for the club in 2 seasons. And he was then involved in the next 4 goals as well. And no, they weren't own goals. 4 Brighton goals. We just beat Man City, who are champions, remember, 5-1, and Steven Alzate scored 2, assisted 2, and got man of the match, putting us in great stead with Sporting coming up soon in Europa League. Shouldn't have worried. 3 5-1 wins in a row with 3 hat-tricks from Ferguson and Marcus Leonardo. Alzate went from hero to zero rather fast.
Red card.
And City got their revenge too, knocking us out of the FA Cup. But I genuinely fancy our chances in the Europa League, you know. But before we faced Pilsen, we went and beat a very good Newcastle team with a strike force of Rafael Leao and Alexander Isak. And after scoring 2 goals in the first 7 minutes, it was those 2 who combined to pull one back, but we held on to the win. And then that's 3 rounds where we were up in the first leg by 4 goals. But we cannot shake off those losses we were waltzing through last season. We are really struggling down in 8th place. And we've got a big team in the semi-final of the Europa League too, pulling AC Milan. Before that, however, 2 more 5-1 wins, this time in the league, which is definitely needed. Still outside of those European spots though. though. First leg at the San Siro, huge semi-final, but Milan take a very early lead. Solly March though picks up the ball wide and finds the head of Evan Ferguson, and it's level. 4 minutes later we find Van Heck at the back post again, 2-1. Solly March then beats the Milan player to the loose ball from the clearance off the corner, takes it wide, but goes all the way, and it's 3-1. Well, until Tonali made it 3-2. And 2 minutes later, we are level again. But I thought a draw at the San Siro would be a fair result, and we couldn't clear our lines, and Di Catalere gave Milan the advantage into the second leg, which I'm going to be crawling and have to come back for in the next episode, including the derby match at the start against Crystal Palace. We left things in the balance last episode, a semi-final against AC Milan, losing the first leg 4-3 after being 3-1 up. And currently we're outside the top 6 in the league with just 3 games remaining. And it's Crystal Palace up next. With Shatalo out injured, it's close to a fully strengthened 11, but we are resting a couple of players by rotating anyway. It took just 23 minutes before the first goal of the derby when we ripped through the Palace defence with excellent passing and McAllister pops us ahead. But tempers were heated and the inevitable red card came when Morelos flew in from the side with a scissors kick, and the referee rightfully sent him off for an early bath just on the hour mark. And that left us to pile on the pressure, and Ferguson made it too just 10 minutes later. On to the second leg of our Europa League, and Van Heck's header equalised on aggregate score, and the match went into extra time, where Da Costa was found over the top to put us 1 foot into the final. But AC Milan had one last throw of the dice from their own corner and sent the game into penalties, where Robert Sanchez saved Milan's first penalty, and it eventually all came down to Da Costa for our 5th when he dispatched it home and put us into the final of the Europa League, where we will face Borussia Dortmund in the final after they knocked out Manchester United 5-3 on aggregate. A win and a loss against Liverpool and Brentford, and we thankfully guarantee ourselves European football next year. But we need to win to keep us in the Europa League next year, just in case we don't win the Europa League final this season, and Evan Ferguson's fast thinking puts us in pole position to do just that. But we were complacent, and maybe our minds were already on the final. We conceded and ultimately drew 1-1 at Carroll Road. And with Arsenal's 2-0 win against Leeds, they leapfrog us, leaving us down in 7th place. So can this squad win the Europa League? I've trusted Ferguson over Leonardo up top, and Wrench instead of Lamptey because he's better defensively. And after defending quite well, we couldn't clear our lines, and Thales Magno scored at the back post just before half time. But we kept ourselves in the fight, and with just 10 minutes to go, Mitoma is on the end of Thuram's cross and we are level. Until, would you believe it, the 94th minute, when the ball drops to Emre Can, who fires the ball into our net and breaks our hearts. That one stings, lads, I'm not gonna lie. We have to look to next season right away, and there are already a few players being targeted from our first team, and I really hope that £12 million increases after we get so far in Europe and on Champions League money. 88 million, that's a lot better. With Spurs circling our goalkeeper Robert Sanchez, I thought I'd ask Michael Edwards to see who he thinks would be a viable replacement should we need to make one. And to be fair to him, 2 of the choices aren't bad. Safanov is only £9 million and Young from Krasnodar, and João Paulo from Santos is decent, but both aren't quite as good at distributing like Sanchez is. Although he's still not quite good as Sanchez, Fruitchel is a keeper I am quite fond of should we need to find a replacement. Tottenham came in with offers for both Thuram and Sanchez, but the offers were way too low to sell. Breaking news, we did eventually sell Robert Sanchez for £11 million to Spurs. And we have replaced him with Karnaseki. Arguably, he's way better than Sanchez, a fantastic goalkeeper in all aspects. And we also sold Tariq Lamptey to Mainz, who in the last year of his contract refused to sign another, and yet we still got £42 million for him. Player we signed for the left-hand side of defence is Miguel Gutierrez, who we got from Gijon for £15 million, which is the same price we got CDM Fabian Ryder, who is exceptional, and I think this will be perfect for that right midfield spot. But our best signing, I think, might be Per Schurz, who I'd say comes right into the starting 11 from Torino, who we paid £60 £16.75 million to sign him. But I've asked Michael again to find me a right back, and well, Vanderson is great, but way too expensive. The other two I'm a little underwhelmed with from our director of football. Replacing Lamptey though is Wilfried Single, who I found by myself, who we also brought in from Torino for the same price as Schurz, leaving us with £30 million and £263k a week in my wage budget, which is a brilliant window, I think. There's still a bit of the window open, but let's head into our first match of the new season against Chelsea. Might be a risk with 4 changes to our back 5 here, with Matomo dropping to left wing while Thuram recovers, but it's daring to say the least. Being daring and taking the game to Chelsea worked though, because Evan Ferguson latched onto the loose ball and scored. Chelsea did equalise when Havertz's header looped over the goalkeeper, unfortunately. But right after half-time, new signing Fabian Rieder did a great job down the right wing for someone who's not natural there, and his cross found Ferguson and we win 2-1. After a great win against Norwich, we played Liverpool just 3 days later at Anfield, and Mohamed Salah was having a good day. He got the first goal, and then this was a very poor penalty which was unfortunately spilled into the net by Karnaseki. But overall, I was happy with the performance despite the 2-1 loss, and we did score a consolation through McAllister. We had a difficult run with City in our 4th match, and Evan Ferguson gave us the lead in the first minute. New left-back Gutierrez powered through down the wing and pulled it back for Ferguson to score a second. And McAllister scored then a third, and by half-time McAllister scored a 4th. It's 4-0. Manchester City did pull one back though through Rodrigo, but then Schurz got us a 5th and we beat Manchester City 5-1. We got a big offer on deadline day for Thuram, totaling £68 million, but I'm not willing to accept. Not a bad window, only £15 million spent technically after what we've sold, and I genuinely think our squad has vastly improved. After a win and a draw in the league through September, it's time for our first Europa League match in the new league phase format, when we play 8 different teams and we start off in a great match against Poulsen. We went 2-0 up through Van Heck and Ferguson. Poulsen did snag one back through bad defending by Vidra, but Evan Ferguson scored another 2 goals late on, getting himself a hat-trick and the 3 points for Brighton. He then scored the only goal in the league match against Leeds at Ellen Road. The next patch included 2 losses, one in the lead to Manchester United and another 2 draws to Palace and Newcastle. Alex Scott did score a beautiful team goal in the win against Arsenal. We started November losing to Tottenham when Kulusevski 5-1 in the 95th minute. But we did win the next 4 games, including against Forest, where Ferguson bagged himself yet another hat-trick for the season in a 4-2 victory, even with us only down to 10 men for 84 minutes. That's thanks to Thuram snapping the Forest player just needlessly 6 minutes into the game. But our December was actually incredible. 6 league wins and 1 win in Europe. The only game we didn't win, we still took the lead at Old Trafford through McAllister. And United only equalised in the second half, rather luckily really, when the ball looped up to Bruno Fernandes for the draw. And that run also propelled us into 2nd place in the Premier League behind Man City, but with a game in hand. Second in Europa League Phase 2 and in a good position to qualify automatically. In January, a huge bid came in for Alex Scott, totaling £18 million from Bayern Munich, but a bid I wasn't willing to accept. He has basically developed into what I would say is our best player. But he's not the only one that's wanted. Half of our first team are all being chased. We started 2025 on a massive high against our rivals Crystal Palace. Thuram put us into the lead in just the 55th minute. Palace did bounce back immediately with a goal from Zaha, but Lewis Dunk, whose vision is next level, picked out Da Costa, who found the winner off the post.
Get in!
Followed by 2 losses to Arsenal and Chelsea. In the Europa League, we finished strong with a 1-0 win against Monaco and a 4-2 away win against Maccabi Tel Aviv, qualifying in 2nd place only behind Arsenal. My scouts found this fantastic 20-year-old attacking midfielder who I just put in a bid for, and he was keen to sign. But Bayern joined the snake list after we rejected their Alex Scott bid and signed him instead. Annoying really, because I had decided to sell Da Costa to Dortmund when I was getting the deal done for £47 million, with some add-ons as well. And we failed to sign a replacement. On a positive note, we won 3 league games at the end of January, and we currently sit at the top of the table. Back-to-back FA Cup wins, including a barn burner at Old Trafford. Our only loss in February came at home against Wolves, and we even took the lead as well. Unfortunately, it just wasn't our day, and Mateus Cunha scored a brace in a 2-1 loss. And yet we are still top, just. and we have Celtic in the next round of the Europa League. In the first leg, we put ourselves in a great position to qualify with a 4-1 away win, and Evan Ferguson scored the first 3 goals of the match. He was pretty much unplayable on the night. He even scored 2 in the second leg. March was going really well until Liverpool knocked us out of the FA Cup. April has some tough league matches and Galatasaray in the Europa League. But we kept trudging through fixtures, and with a great squad rotation, we kept winning games. Another 3-0 win against Newcastle at home. Evan Ferguson then scored another 4 goals across both legs in the Europa League quarter-final tie against Galatasaray in a 5-0 aggregate win, putting us into the semi-final against Sevilla. We didn't even concede a goal in April until we lost 2-0 against Brentford. Semi-final time in the home leg, and Evan Ferguson smashes us into the lead. And not long later, Casado finds him over the top, and again it's 2-0. But second half, Sevilla composed themselves, and Oscar's shot was palmed by Karnaseki onto the bar and into the net, unfortunately, to end the first leg 2-1. The second leg didn't start as great, as Sevilla scored within the first 10 minutes. But of course, Evan Ferguson, the top scorer of the competition, put us back into the lead on aggregate. Only for half an hour though, as En-Nesyri got his and Sevilla's second on the night. And twice in 1 year, our Europa League dreams were shattered when Sevilla got a third. In between that, we played Liverpool, and against the champions, we stole a 1-0 win through Marcus Leonardo. He did also decide to get himself sent off for a second yellow, but I think we can let him off. The game against Villa was a story of 2 penalties scored, with our next fixture against Man City. And with just 2 games to go, you might call this a title decider. Going into the game, we were missing key players in Schürrle and Ryder. And what a dream start it was for us when Alex Scott found himself free and gave us the advantage. After a scramble in City's box, the ball dropped to Ferguson and we are 2-0 ahead. And on the half-hour mark, we couldn't believe what was happening, as Alex Scott put us 3-0 up and given us a huge advantage in the title race. But the most unfortunate own goal happened the minute after, and it gave City hope. And in the second half, Kevin De Bruyne put City just a goal behind us. And breathing down our necks, and after being 3-0 up, of course, Manchester City equalise and pull it back through Laporte. And giving the title back in the hands of Manchester City, who have Brentford on the final day, while we host Fulham at home, who have already been relegated. And on this final day, noise broke around the Amex as Brentford took the lead against Man City from Damsgaard's unbelievable chip. But just 5 minutes later, City broke down the left and equalised through Rodrigo. The drama continued at home though, as Matomo gave us the lead just 3 minutes after City's equaliser. And immediately from kickoff, don't ask me how, but somehow Bernd Leno turned this save into a goal. But Fulham, despite being relegated, still wanted to disrupt us when Torres made it 2-1. And still, with the scores 1-1 at Brentford, Matomo then curls the ball into the top corner, and we are 3-1 up and currently winning the Premier League at half-time. We just need Brentford to stay strong, which is exactly what they didn't do, and pass the ball to Erling Haaland inside their own box.
Oh no! Oh no!
Frustration at the Amex, despite us being ahead, spilled onto the pitch, as without any danger of Fulham scoring 1, let alone bringing the game level, Marcus Leonardo recklessly chops their man down and receives a straight red card. However, there was one final twist. The new hero of Brighton, Christian Norgard, the Brentford player, scored in the 81st minute equaliser against Manchester City. And yes, dreams do come true, Seagulls fans, because Brentford held on and Brighton are the Premier League champions for the first time in their history. It took just 3 seasons to do. So how much longer will it take for us to win the Champions League? Well, we will have a great budget for next season, and Michael Edwards' contract is running out. So my question is, do we replace him or do we keep him? I can't believe it either. Brighton just won the Premier League.
Get in!
On the final day of the season, no less. But I know you're all dying to know whether Michael stayed, that slimy little snake. He did! I offered him a new deal because he came in with a fantastic suggestion for once. But before I show off the transfers, some drama in the Premier League, as Manchester United are docked 5 points for breaking financial fair play.
I say, what a coincidence, eh?
It seems a decision to bring in Karnaseki was a good one, as he won the Golden Glove. Transfers out then, as Munoz departed for Southampton, and Billy Gilmore and Adingra left for minimal fees. And despite a lot of interest being shown in players like Ferguson, they all signed extensions instead of wanting to leave. Caicedo even asked for a new deal right after a bid from Real Madrid was rejected. Unfortunately, I didn't get it on record, but I went to Michael's office and I asked him for a centre-back suggestion. And we signed one of his suggestions in Fonseca, a young Portuguese centre-back from Benfica for £14 million up front with a couple of million in add-ons. So for now, Michael keeps his job. We also signed possibly an FM favourite in Arda Güler as another option for that future cam position. And then while attribute searching for a CDM with good stamina, teamwork and work rate, I found an 18-year-old new gen from Portugal who looks incredible. Arda Güler I picked up for just £11.5 million and Ramon £1.6 million, a bargain. The final sign-in for £15 million is another good right back and I couldn't resist. Rosalev looked fantastic and a player I'm not really familiar with. We went into the Community Shield game missing a couple of first teamers and took them to penalties, but McAllister and Marcus Leonardo missed unfortunately. But fear not my comrades, for it is the first game of the season at the Amex Stadium and Manchester United are the visitors, and they aren't going to be leaving with smiles on their faces, because even after they equalise we continue to score at will, putting 4 goals past them, eventually in a 4-1 win, with my favourite definitely being the final goal. Look at this disaster class. The psychology of football is weird, isn't it? Because any other day a draw against West Ham is not great. But when the equaliser is in the 93rd minute, it's fantastic. Losing to Tottenham on the other hand though, not so much.
Damn it, Carl!
We bounced back with a 2-0 win which still sees us sit close to the top part of the league. The transfer window slammed shut and no more ins and outs, but there was bids for Karnaseki on deadline day, but no intention of selling. Not when he's this good anyway. Before I show you the epic encounter we have with Manchester City, you need to see our first match in the Champions League. It was away to Juventus and despite going behind, it was Evan Ferguson's day. He scored a hat-trick and my word wasn't he unplayable as well. Some powerful headers scored in a 3-1 away win that we could be proud of. He even followed this up with 2 against Ludogorets in the competition. But anyway, I promised you a masterclass at the Etihad and McAllister has already started to show you why. Followed by a bizarre goal scored by City from that looped pass. Alex Scott finds McAllister for an excellent second before half-time. The Argentinian free kick finds Schürrle for a third, and City do come back at us with a De Bruyne retrieves a loose ball, and eventually Grealish is found, but the game finishes 3-2 to Brighton. And look at all those green results in September, including another away win at Stamford Bridge. And that was thanks to a back post header by Schürrle. But wait until you see how good our October was. That actually started off with another 2 goals from Ferguson against Leicester, putting us 2-0 up with this second coming early in the second half. But Leicester got one back from Bustos soon after. However, Solly March was found with a lovely through ball and assisted by Ryder for our third. In the Champions League, Ferguson scored 4 goals against Sporting in a 5-1 home win, giving us 3 from 3 so far in the competition. With 2 goals from his right in the first 15 minutes from excellent assists. 2 goals with his head in the second half, putting us out of reach from the Portuguese side. What's weird is he hasn't really progressed and developed much at all, but for some reason he has been incredible for us, scoring 19 goals in just 13 games. Marcus Leonardo looks the far greater player, and he has been out for a month with a fractured arm, but it's going to be hard to give him a game. In the League Cup we faced Southampton and they gave us a penalty early on, which we missed. But once again, we needn't have panicked because Ferguson was on hand to score for just 4 minutes later. And we scored a second 5 minutes after that through Ryder to progress through to the quarterfinals. It was another 5 wins from 5 games in October, meaning 12 wins in a row, a new record. However, could we continue this run with both Liverpool and PSG in our next 2 fixtures? Because right now we are enjoying ourselves at the top of the Premier League and the top of the Champions League. Well, the fixture at Anfield could not have started any better when McAllister was played through and he scored. He then made it 2 from the penalty spot right before half-time, and that's when it all went downhill. Salah pulled one back early in the second half. Tsimikas then played an insane cross and Havertz equalised. And well, Lewis Dunk isn't quite as good as what he once was, and unfortunately he couldn't clear the ball, and Gavi snatched it and stole 3 points and ended our insane run. A Musiala goal and assist in the Champions League also stopped us from picking up a win against PSG. Well, That and the fact that we didn't score a goal, apparently that's quite important. Something we also failed to do when we travelled to Denmark. It wasn't all doom and gloom though in November, as we got 3 wins in the Premier League, including a 1-0 win against Forest where Arda Güler scored his first goal for the club. That run also kept us at the top of the league, but we do have our rivals Palace in a couple of matches' time, who are also having a good season, and December proved to be another tricky month, as you will see. Starting off with a 1-0 loss to Southampton in the league. We were hoping to bounce back in the derby against Palace, but Schürrle got sent off within 3 minutes.
Red card.
And I smell another imposter in our ranks with goalkeeping like this from the resulting free kick. Things didn't get much better because Eze scored a Palace second. But then, a lifeline, as with all of our injuries recently, Kozlowski gets a game and scores a beauty, and we're back in it. Well, up until Eddie Nketiah is played through and Palace win 3-1 at the Amex. But don't worry, we will get our chance for revenge later on in the season, I promise. Don't you go anywhere. For now, we travel to Turkey and to where the residents call hell against Galatasaray. And we made it our bitch as we came away with a very comfortable win. And even former Fenerbahce youth product Arda Güler got involved with the 3rd goal. We did then fall behind against Watford in the League Cup quarterfinals, but after the lads scoffed their halftime oranges, they came back out and scored 2 goals without reply and put us into the semi-finals. Now, December definitely had its ups and downs with wins against Everton and Newcastle and draws against Arsenal and Leicester. And we've fallen at the turn of the new year down to 3rd place in the league. January is the most important month of the season so far, with 2 Champions League matches against Dortmund and Real Madrid to try and qualify in that top 8 position, as well as our semi-final tie against Manchester United in the League Cup, with a possible chance to face Palace in the final. With bids coming in for our left back, I thought I'd ask Michael for some options. Yeah, he's still as useless as ever. My scouts though found a left back in Greece who was a new gem with fantastic attributes and an £11 million buyout clause, which I had to pull the trigger on. Especially because we sold our left back for almost double the cost to Manchester City. Things on the pitch did not start great in 2026 with losses to both Chelsea and Newcastle. That did put us in great form going into the semi-final in the League Cup against United, but we still looked to take charge of the game and Alex Scott scored. And then Evan Ferguson doubled it. Man United did get one back though, and it is only the first leg, but what could be better than a win at Old Trafford? How about a 4-2 home win in the second leg? We're in the final, boys.
Nice.
And of course, it's Crystal Palace who we face in that final. But before that, we've got Champions League games to take care of, and our former player Da Costa chipped in a free kick and Dortmund take the lead just 3 minutes in. Of course, the Europa League winners 2 seasons ago, who we met in that final, we knew it would be a tough game, but after Güler's equaliser, Ryder puts us ahead from the penalty spot. But Yusuf and Makoko did score one more for Dortmund just before half-time, and we could only grab a point. There was some drama that spilled over as Da Costa, who had only left the club days before this match, slashed down his former teammate and received a straight red card. Off you go, son. We unfortunately couldn't get a result against Real Madrid at the Bernabeu in our final Champions League group match. And after being in such a comfortable position before those 2 fixtures, we dropped into 9th place and into the playoffs, with the draw being very much played out as we face Red Bull Salzburg. January was a really tricky month, but we came out at the end of it with 2 wins and a draw in the league. It was snowing in Austria for our first leg in the Champions League, but that doesn't stop Ferguson from scoring in the first minute. They did get one back pretty soon after, but we seemed in control, and Leonardo also got on the score sheet in the first half, and Ryder made it 3-1 in the first leg, giving us a strong advantage for the returning fixture. With the cup final against Palace in the following month to wait for, we focused on gaining positions back in the league, which once again we managed to do at Old Trafford in an exceptional 3-0 win, only allowing them 1 shot on target all match. We lost the second leg against Salzburg in the Champions League, but still progressed through 6-5 on aggregate. Also losing to Arsenal 1-0 right after, but a win against Everton and 2 rounds of the FA Cup in February, and it's into a very much intense March. Inter Milan await for us in the Champions League, and a derby against Palace in the Prem with them in the final a couple of weeks after that. And honestly, what a crazy month this was. Inter Milan are one of the most respected clubs in European football, multiple time champions of Europe, with some of the best players certainly in Italian football and maybe even in the world. But when they scored their penalty, we were already 3-0 up. And we just continued the onslaught, and we kept scoring goals without a response, piling 27 shots onto their goal and scoring 7. Yes, we won 7-1 in the first leg. We did alright in the second leg too. The derby match against Palace went a whole lot worse, and they took the lead. And then when Wilfried Single got himself a straight red card, Palace then took away the bragging rights right before the cup final with a second and the final goal of the game. A draw to Southampton, and it's not good news for Brighton as Palace have overtaken us in the league right before the cup final to go into the top 4 spot. Right then, it's cup final day and the board have zero faith in us while the fans expect nothing less than a win. Our starter lineup is set and the boys are raring for revenge. And at a Wembley Stadium, it took us just 2 minutes to snatch the ball from the Palace defence, and Alex Scott puts us 1-0 up with a cracking finish. Evan Ferguson then wanted a piece of the action and he scored just 8 minutes later. And today was really a day for the Seagulls as Ferguson picked up his second of the game and made it 3-0, and Matoma caught a sweet volley which picked up a deflection for the 4th. Palace did pull one back, but we win the game against our rivals and lift the trophy. What a moment. We were on fire recently, also knocking Chelsea out of the FA Cup on penalties. Each month seemingly is becoming more important than the last as we need to overtake Palace in the league with our game in hand. We face Bayern in the quarter-finals of the Champions League and we have Aston Villa in the semi-final of the FA Cup. We can tick off the game in hand win overtaking Palace to jump into 4th with a win against Forest. The most outrageous goalkeeping error ever could be costly for our Champions League hopes as for some reason Karnaseki tried to head this and he missed for Osman's tap-in. This is the hung leg too, and in the second half Goretzka doubled Bayern's advantage. And Osman's early goal in the second leg was enough to see us out of the competition for this season. But this season is far from over, and you do not want to miss how this campaign ends as Liverpool take the lead at the Amex. Thankfully, Josip Shatala was there to score the equaliser, and Van Heck met a corner at the back post, and we steal all 3 points against the Scousers. It was also bye-bye from the FA Cup this season as we missed 2 penalties in the shootout of the semi-final whilst hitting the post. And we ended April with a win against Wolves and a disappointing draw against Bournemouth. And although Liverpool looked to have the title won, it was so tight for the top 4 spots as Manchester City have a game in hand over ourselves and Crystal Palace. And our last 3 fixtures, Tottenham, Brentford and Manchester City on the final day. Slightly off topic, but how amazing is this guy who won the Next Gen award? Just a shame he's valued above our £20 million limit. Anyway, back to the fixtures, and although Spurs have Sesko up top, it was our star striker Ferguson who scored the first goal. Not to be outdone though, Sesko was found over the top and his pace and power is unforgiving, and just like that, it's back on even Stevens. That's until Thuram made a lovely run on the inside from the wing and was found to bury the ball into the net 2-1. And with just 2 games left, one of 4 teams is going to miss out on the top 4, and it could be one of Brighton or Crystal Palace. After last season when Brentford helped us win the title, this time they could cost us as they beat us 1-0 through Ivan Toney. And just like that, it's down to the final match against Manchester City for who gets Champions League football next season. And what an epic final match it was too, as Alex Scott gave us the lead 14 minutes in, putting us into the driving seat. Until Erling Haaland's penalty was dispatched and we were back down to 5th place. City then took the lead and things were not looking good for Brighton, until the ever-reliable Evan Ferguson decided to take matters into his own hands and score 2 goals within 2 minutes and turn the game completely on its head, going from behind and in 5th place into the lead and sending City into the Europa League next season. And that's when we absolutely excel because Matoma scored right after. And in the second half, it was 4-2 and our heroes who continued to step up scored a 5th from Thuram and a 6th by Single, and although we didn't win the league this season, I still think it was a successful one. Amazingly, Crystal Palace will be joining us next season in the Champions League too. With a lovely £70 million budget, there's only one thing left to do. Hello Michael, we need to have a little chat. Last season was a battle against our rivals Palace. They had an insane season and finished just a point behind us in 4th. Of course, we had the bragging rights in the cup final too. And right now, the board can't get enough. Fans on the other hand are a little harder to please. They're still a little bit annoyed with the loss to Bayern Munich in the Champions League, which I feel is a little harsh. But anyway, we've been given a healthy budget to try and improve the side for the upcoming campaign. So of course we seek Michael's knowledge of players, and once again he forgets we only have a £20 million per player budget. But it seems from a very quick search my scouts have already reported an insane Senegalese centre-back from Stade Liège who's just 18. I won't show him off just yet. We actually needed a backup goalkeeper, and the Georgian from Valencia is a perfect choice given that he is actually good enough for the first team if we didn't have Karnaseki, and he costs less than £5 million. A lot of players asked for new contracts in the last couple of seasons, and it seems our wage expenditure has nearly tripled in 4 years. Hard to argue really when we've become champions in England just 3 seasons in though. And to be honest, Thuram is our highest paid player and he's only on 145k a week, which is basically pennies compared to what Haaland's being paid. And that's shown too in the club's bank balance, which has sat very healthy now for a couple of seasons. Hey, we signed a centre-back from Stade Liège, age 18. He looks fantastic, and I genuinely think I need to give him some game time this season. £20 million was his release clause, so it was right at the peak of our limit. So if I'm looking at my best 11, I think I'd probably slot him in for most games this season, especially against weaker opposition alongside Van Heck, and maybe scoot him out to the left side as he's strong with both feet. However, when the first game came around, I had to make more changes due to fitness issues and injuries. And we kicked off our season within just 4 minutes when Marcus Leonardo snatched the ball off the Villa defence and dispatched his shot. Our second goal was even more impressive. The quick layoff passing and the assist into the path of Thuram was sublime. Aston Villa did score early in the second half though through Josh Sargent, which did threaten the 3 points we were on our way to, but thankfully we scored another 2 goals with Leonardo picking up his second in the 89th minute, and substitute Kozlowski got the 4th with his 4-1 opening day win with a wonderful finish. However, the start of the season didn't all include good performances, because after going 1-0 up and 2-1 up, we lost at home to Arsenal, and we have Crystal Palace next. So with Ferguson's recovery and Marcus Leonardo's good performance, he starts in the derby. And I really think we made the right call as Alex Scott was played through within just 8 minutes to give us the lead. And following on from that, Marcus Leonardo put in a man-of-the-match performance, scoring 3 goals in this match alone to take his tally very high just after 3 league matches. He picked up 1 in the first half, 2 in the second, in a game we absolutely dominated against a team last season that caused us so many problems. And we sent the fans home buzzing with a 6-1 win. But again, we followed that with a poor result. And then we faced a Liverpool side captained by Trent with Kai Havertz as their key player.
Sorry, what?
And after a goalless first half, Liverpool took the lead through Tielemans. It did took us another 15 minutes, but we worked a throw in and Thuram's shot somehow found the net to equalise. And although he didn't start the game, Ferguson made an appearance off the bench and scored the winner in the 83rd minute. 16 from England, including of course Palace, are in the Champions League with us this season, and we have our fixtures in. The transfer window shut and Palace got a deal on deadline day done for Diogo Costa from Porto. That's not bad at all. But an incredibly quiet window for us, because I don't really feel like we needed to splash on loads of players this summer as we go into a very interesting September, which started off with Gutierrez getting a straight red card against Southampton within 4 minutes. Thankfully though, Leonardo and Thuram combined with a lovely 1-2 and scored the only goal of the game. I gave Ferguson a start against Manchester United though, and he didn't let me down, scoring in the 3-0 win at the Amex. September also included a win and a loss in the Champions League, a 0-0 draw against Wolves, and a win in the Cup. But October you don't want to miss, with a run of AC Milan, Newcastle and Manchester City. Before AC Milan, we got back to winning ways in the Champions League with a big win against Salzburg at home. Kozlowski started after a bit of a rotation and he proved he should be getting more game time, scoring the first 2 goals. Shares got yet another back post header from a corner to score, but again the goal of the month probably went to McAllister, who from out of nowhere struck this beauty into the top corner. No goalkeeper in the world is going to save that. Hilariously, the goalkeeper it was Salzburg's keeper Fruchel, who I almost signed instead of Karnaseki. And we formed a good run of games around that Champions League match with 2 wins against Norwich and Leeds. Right into that hard run of games I mentioned before, that didn't go so well. I mean, a draw at the San Siro against AC Milan is not a bad result at all, but being in the lead twice against Newcastle and losing 4-2 with an own goal is a bit demoralising. Followed by Man City knocking us out of the League Cup with 2 goals from a Belgian new gen from centre midfield. We were still up there in the league title race though heading into November, with the leaders Chelsea in a match that we have coming up very soon. We currently sat in the top 8 of the Champions League group as well, but Palace all the way down in 27th have only beaten Genk and lost to PSG and Rangers. Unlucky. It was another 3 points for us though when we welcomed AEK Athens to the Amex and Alex Scott scored the only 2 goals of the game. And we looked unstoppable against Fulham, winning 5-0 away. But then we lost to Middlesbrough at home. And when it was finally time to take on Chelsea at the top of the table clash, they opened the scoring really early on through Sterling. But in a very tight encounter, it didn't take us long before Thuram picked up the equalising goal, not giving either side the advantage they craved. So instead, we gifted them a 2-point advantage just 3 days later when we drew with West Ham, dropping us down into 3rd place with City now in the driving seat if they win their game in hand. And once again, that's who we face in the next month, right after a game against Real Madrid. And honestly, strap yourselves in because December as a whole is mental, with the Christmas period also including games against Arsenal, Tottenham and Manchester United. This Champions League match against Real Madrid had everything including drama and 2 absolutely stunning goals. Thuram put us 2 goals ahead before a corner was cleared and the ball dropped to Alex Scott, who rifled in a volley from the edge of the area to make it 3-0. In the second half though, Real responded and Chukwueze scored maybe an even better goal right into our top corner. And Scalvini brought the game back to within a goal, but just 2 minutes later, a fantastic through ball found Ryder and we defeat Real Madrid 4-2 in the Champions League. And from that wildly entertaining game to having to wake people up to tell them the final whistle had gone in the match against Man City. But our next set of games made me celebrate like this. Because despite our trip to the Emirates starting with Arsenal slicing us open within 15 minutes to us comedically smashing the ball against Martinelli to score, we actually played very well and it was the start of a very good run. Evan Ferguson was back in the starting 11 and scoring goals like we know he can, getting 2, putting us into the lead before Matoma picked up a 3rd. It was even easier against Spurs as Arda Güler scored in a 2-0 win in our second trip to North London in just 2 games. Then we came home for Boxing Day and we battered some Wolves 4-0. And before the new year came in, we visited Old Trafford where Ruud van Nistelrooy is still the manager and we took complete control, scoring 2 goals before half-time and picking up our 3rd from Alex Scott without even letting him score a goal. And yet we still couldn't jump ahead of City in first. But we had 2 major problems with the squad. Ferguson has been starting games because Marcus Leonardo broke his lower leg at the end of October. But now Ferguson is out injured for a while as well. And bids began to come in for our star players. Now, I had no intention of selling, but I did buy a new player, former FM Wonderkid legend Thiago Almeida, for just £7.5 million, who is still in the MLS and a cracking squad player. In the league, we started the new year with a 5-0 win against Leeds, but I can't decide whether it was a good month or not. Because the contrast in matches and results were all over the place, and defensively, we were sometimes a shambles, like this goal we gifted to Norwich to equalise in a 1-1 draw at Carroll Road. Straight into a 6-0 away win just days later in Copenhagen, where we had 33 shots on goal. Coming back to England, and we let Sesko score a late equaliser and pinch man of the match in our home fixture, a 2-2 draw against Spurs, who, by the way, would be giving my dad absolute wet dreams with Simeone as their manager.
Get in!
But with another Champions League win against Genk and then a disappointing draw to Villa again, it was an unbeaten run since Middlesbrough back in late November. Just too many draws. And it's 3rd in the league, 7 points behind Chelsea, who are beginning to break away from us, but we did finish in the top 8 of the Champions League, with Palace having to go into the playoffs. But once again, the fixtures in February sees us host leaders Chelsea, next with an away trip to City at the end of the month. I don't think I've ever seen a result quite like Brighton versus leaders Chelsea before. After winning the Serie A with Milan, Tuchel was back in charge at the start of the season for the Blues. And I don't think he would have ever taken a battering quite like we gave Chelsea on this day, with them sitting top of the Premier League, because there was probably a good chance he would get the sack after this match is finished. And I'm probably going to get some free points from every man in Brighton and some knickers thrown at me from every woman there, because we went and scored 8 goals in 69 minutes before finally taking our foot off the pedal and allowing them to score an injury time goal to end the match 8-1. I'll say it again, we win the match 8-1. 8 bloody 1. And 3 days later we got stuffed 4-0 from Newcastle in the FA Cup. And although we then only drew to Forest, I don't think the women of Brighton will be asking for their garments to be returned, because when we travelled to the Etihad, we showed the same amount of mercy we showed Chelsea, and we destroyed them 3-0. Right before we play Barcelona in the Champions League. But before we do, look how tight it is in the title race now. Just 2 points separating the top 4 teams with 9 games remaining, and City just 2 points behind us in 5th. Where did Liverpool come from, by the way? But with my main aim of winning the Champions League for Brighton, I was very disappointed with our first leg performance at the Camp Nou. We didn't really show up, and Barcelona were rather lethal, scoring 2 goals, taking the big advantage into the second leg. West Ham capitalised on our misfortune, scoring very early in the following league match before the second leg. This was the kick up the arse we needed though, probably, and even after Evan Ferguson's winner, Thiago Almeida scored the first 2 goals for the club, securing all 3 points in one of the closest title races I have ever seen. We took Barcelona to extra time after a 3-1 lead in the second leg, but Frank Kesse's 119th minute winner unfortunately knocked us out of the competition. But our season was far from over. We beat Fulham, but once again couldn't beat Middlesbrough, and April had some very winnable games and a hard clash against Newcastle, while May included Palace and title contenders Liverpool on the final day of the season. And you just know, with the 2 teams first and second right now, that's going to be the title decider more than likely. April couldn't have gone any better, with a very tight 1-0 win against Newcastle, followed by a late win against Everton and a 7-1 win against Brentford, where a returning Marcus Leonardo scored 4 goals after his leg break earlier this season. I'm chuffed for him, and it's on to Crystal Palace. With us currently sat on top and them needing to win to keep their European qualification dreams alive. And to be fair to them, they did get to the round of 16, only to miss out thanks to 2 goals by Mbappe in extra time in the Champions League this season. But there was only 1 goal in the derby, and it was Palace who snatched it in the 82nd minute as well. And wouldn't you know it, Diogo Costa got man of the match. Amazingly, both Chelsea and Liverpool lost as well, and we still held on to that top position. And we dispatched Southampton even after their penalty after 3 minutes, quite comfortably. But Liverpool lost to Chelsea, and the title could only go to 2 clubs on the final day. We just need to match Chelsea's result when we play Liverpool. But you'll never guess who Chelsea is playing on the final day. They're of course away to Crystal Palace. And at Selhurst Park, our biggest rival scored within 12 minutes to almost gift us the trophy well within our grasp. But at Anfield, we gave ourselves an even bigger advantage when Marcus Leonardo scored to make it 1-0, and the score stayed the same at both stadiums until the 87th minute, when Liverpool scored an equaliser, meaning if Chelsea win, they clinch the title from us. And it wasn't entirely over at Palace, but fortunately for Brighton, it was a home goal in the 95th minute, allowing us to lift the Premier League title once again, just a point ahead of Newcastle and 2 in front of Chelsea in what was an epic title race. I need to lie down. We did it again! After an insane title race, our rivals actually helped us win the league on the final day. Cheers for that, Brendan. If not for a last-minute extra time goal, we could have had a good run in the Champions League too. Both the board and the supporters are happy with our performance so far. However, they will love me once they see the transfer I just made. And I didn't even need Michael, the bloody panty sniffer, because I always check the end of contract players, and Florian Wirtz is top of that list. He wants to move to a bigger club, and the only club interested is Tottenham. My scouts also reported on a very good new-gen striker from Birmingham who looks very handy. And for just £10 million, I got the deal done really quickly. And on the 1st of July, Florian Wirtz also joined the club and took the number 7 shirt. The transfer window was rather quiet outside of a couple of bids for our goalkeeper. And we went straight into the Community Shield flying with 4 goals by Marcus Leonardo. But our first month of the season included 3 of the best teams in the league and Tottenham. Newcastle snuck into 2nd place last last year, remember? So imagine my delight when Florian Wirtz scored just 4 minutes into his Premier League debut against them on the opening day. Fabian Rieder then dispatched 2 penalties and we made that win look so easy. Manchester City then went and signed Eze from our rivals Crystal Palace for a big fee as well for the 29-year-old. And Palace have already had a good window signing Lokonga for their midfield as well as Livramento at right back for both good value. They also took early advantage in the league, winning their first 3 matches. We, on the other hand, dropped some points to Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. But of course, we beat Tottenham 1-0. It was then time for an early contender for game of the season at the Etihad when Mitoma scored in the 3rd minute. Erling Haaland then equalised in the second half and we got what we thought was the winner in the 88th minute. But we were wrong. And Erling Haaland popped up with this outrageous header in the 93rd minute. But hold on to your hats because there was time for one more roll of the dice and somehow Caicedo found McAllister and we pinch all 3 points. There hasn't been a chance to play Liam Kemp, our new wonder kid, just yet. But 11 goals he has scored for the youth team has been very promising. And after beating Leicester 4-1, we only briefly took top spot before Palace regained it once again, defeating Manchester United through Nketiah's goal. The transfer window slammed shut without us doing anything else, but big money being spent elsewhere, including Newcastle getting Yeremy Pino, which instantly makes them a threat once again this year. Not to mention Man City signed Ferran Torres for the 2nd time for 70 million. Our Champions League fixtures came through and it's starting off incredibly difficult in September with Juve and Bayern Munich, but we butt heads with Barcelona once again. People have been asking about sharing this tactic, so I have put it on my Patreon for all the members who support me there. The link is in the description if you want to sign up and all the other benefits. Anyway, as if September wasn't hard enough, we lost to West Ham in the 92nd minute, right before our Champions League match against Juventus, from which we took the lead just 19 minutes in from Florian Wirtz. Almost from Juve's kickoff, we snatched the ball and Mitoma's run was fantastic and he found Marcus Leonardo for a very fast double whammy. And the game was over in just 15 minutes later when Wirtz tapped in the rebound from Van Heck's header at the back post. And we enjoyed the same scoreline, 4 games in a row into a game against Munich. But we couldn't keep that going and we lost 1-0. October doesn't look too difficult, but what a strange month. We are still trailing Crystal Palace, by the way, in the league. We started off the month giving away a 2-goal lead against Aston Villa, ending with a draw. Former Brighton favourite Solly March, who moved to Everton in the summer when his contract ran out, set up a goal for Everton in the 91st minute against us. And that also happened to be a 2-2 equaliser. A 0-0 draw to Arsenal was swiftly followed by knocking Spurs out on penalties in the Cup. But we finally got a win in the league during this month when Marcus Leonardo scored 4 goals against Norwich in a 6-0 win, which he also did against Nice in the Champions League. But those 3 draws have seen us drop to 6 points behind Liverpool in top spot now and still behind Palace going into November. And with Liverpool at the end of the month, it was important that we started getting back into form, and against Marseille in the Champions League, I felt that to be the case. Alex Scott scored 2 fantastic goals, to be fair, and somehow Marcus Leonardo was onside when he scored the 4th. Our other Champions League game didn't start great at all when we conceded in the 1st minute against Lazio. However, 2 massively informed players for us so far this season is Alex Scott and Marcus Leonardo, and they both showed up in this game to make Lazio's early smiles disappear before half-time, and we went in 3-1 up, and they came out and secured themselves a hat-trick each, with Mitoma scoring another late one for a 7-1 win. In between, we picked up 2 league wins and now it's time to face the leaders, Liverpool. And unfortunately, our good run come to an end at home when Liverpool scored 2 goals late in the second half through Mijatovic and Kamara. And the gap extends to 9 points between us now. How will we recover from this? And December looks to be the most difficult month of the year too, with Palace up first, Barcelona in the Champions League, with United and Chelsea to play also. The derby was one of the tightest in years, but the bragging rights came home with us as Florian Wirtz picked up the only goal of the game. He was also the scorer of the opening goal in the Champions League clash against Barcelona at home, but that game was soon flipped on its head because Barcelona equalised through Ansu Fati. And they kept scoring goals, putting themselves 2-1 up early in the second half, and a minute later they were celebrating their 3rd and all looked lost for the Seagulls. And that was until Alex Scott got a second Brighton goal and the belief was back. In the 84th minute, Marcus Leonardo was squeezed through and an equaliser was scored, before a back post header from Per Schurz in the 93rd minute stole all 3 points. And we followed that with a trip to Old Trafford a few days later when Marcus Leonardo gave us the advantage. And our Dutch centre-back in our ranks, Van Heck, popped up with a second, and another 3 points was claimed in the Premier League. Unfortunately though, Newcastle knocked us out of the League Cup, but it was our only loss that month as we came away with wins against Fulham, Burnley, Forest and Wolves, while drawing 2-2 with Chelsea. And we finally launch ourselves above Crystal Palace in the league and put ourselves back in the title race. Marcus Leonardo currently has 33 goals in 30 appearances so far this season, and we rewarded him with a fat new contract. Speaking of goals, backup centre-back Fonseca has scored 17 for the youth team so far, which is pretty mental. The start of the year began terribly with a loss to Everton at the Amex, but we brushed that off right away though, and January proved to be a fantastic month, especially for Marcus Leonardo. Alongside his new contract, he scored 5 goals in 3 games in the latter part of the month. We always looked comfortable, including our 2 Champions League fixtures and wins against Burnley and Newcastle. Although we have developed an 8-point gap in front of Palace, we do still chase Liverpool, but look at that Champions League group. Second with 21 points. The first team exposure for Ndiaye has been fantastic for his progress, with his attributes looking very good for a 20-year-old centre-back. As well as our Greek left-back, who has been fantastic for us this season. A trophy we are yet to win is the FA Cup, and that continues to evade us this season as Bournemouth knocked us out in the 4th round with their 93rd minute winner. With only 2 league games in February, it was important we picked up 6 points, and with the visit from Manchester United, it could have been very difficult. But then, considering how many times we have destroyed the Red Devils in recent seasons, I shouldn't have been surprised to see us come out 3-0 winners. We popped 5 past Fulham too, but our next match was Liverpool at Anfield, followed by Juventus in the Champions League. And Liverpool are coming off the back of dropping 5 points in their last 2 league fixtures. So guess who's top of the league now?
Nice.
Our Brazilian top scorer Leonardo wasn't fit enough to start, and I thought we were doomed as soon as Liverpool scored within 4 minutes and possibly in for a hammering. However, how wrong could I have been, because Arda Güler equalised from a free kick just a few minutes later. He was actually starting up front and he was put through to put us 2-1 up, and Alex Scott made it 3-1 at Anfield. Fabian Rieder shocked the world, putting us 4-1 up, but the onslaught continued and Marcus Leonardo came off the bench, and there was still time for him to score 2 more goals in 2 minutes to shock the Reds, and we walk away from Anfield 6-1 winners.
Sorry, what?
We travel to Turin to try and make it 3 away wins in a row, and João Fonseca puts us en route to do just that. And Alex Scott doubled our chances, before Marcus Leonardo appeared in the 92nd minute to score an amazing third. Shockingly, the only game we couldn't win in March was against Norwich. But how long will that last, because we have a run of fixtures in April which include 2 legs against Real Madrid, Arsenal, Palace and Manchester City. Marcus rescued a point against Arsenal as we head into the first leg of the quarterfinal of the Champions League against Real Madrid, where the only goal of the game came from the spot. From there we go and face Crystal Palace in the derby, and it's our backup right back Rosalev who gets the only goal of the game. On to the second leg against Madrid. 15 times Real Madrid have won this competition, and with the game teetering in the balance after the 1-0 win in the first leg, it was so relaxing for us when Marcus Leonardo scored 2 very early goals in the second leg of the quarterfinals, and the man even got himself a third to take the match ball home, and we are through to the semi-final. And I completely got caught off guard by our next opponents, because Liverpool lost in the round of 16 against Club Brugge, who then beat Bayern Munich in the quarterfinals. So before we face those underdogs ourselves, we first beat both Brentford and Tottenham away from home, quite comfortably too. The Man City game was rescheduled for the first leg against Bruges, and it was Alex Scott who broke the deadlock just before half-time in the semi-final. Trying to stay cool in the second half when Florian Wirtz made it 2 made it very difficult. We still had another leg in this tie, but we are so close to the Champions League final now. But they have got this far for a reason, and they pulled one back in the 91st minute, and we travel to Belgium. By the way, it is still Scott Parker in charge. You might be wondering why I'm showing you a 1-1 draw between Liverpool and Norwich. That is because with those points dropped, our incredible run in this league has seen us lift the Premier League trophy for the 3rd time and in back-to-back seasons. Now, Club Brugge gave us our hardest time in the Champions League so far, but we held on for a 0-0 draw and we're in the Champions League final. And our opponents in the final is Kylian Mbappe's PSG side, who demolished Atletico Madrid 5-0 on aggregate in the semi-final. The team for the final is probably our strongest, with Marcus Leonardo leading the line, of course hoping to add on to the 54 goals he has scored so far this season. And PSG kick us off in the final at Old Trafford, in front of 75,000 fans and millions watching at home. The first half finished goalless, but when the deadlock was eventually broken, it was thanks to Jamal Musiala and his bag of tricks. It seemed to have flicked off our defender before he Cruyff flicked it into our empty net. But come off the man, come off the moment, an unlikely scorer at the best of times, Wilfried Singo shoots us back on level terms from 25 yards out with half an hour to go. But PSG piled on the pressure, and it was Kylian Mbappe who dispatched a second home for the Parisians and the final goal of the game. Absolutely gutted. No Champions League trophy this season, but yet another Premier League title, I guess. Michael was quite excited though, because there's £122 million in the budget to spend next summer. We were fingertips away until Mbappe scored in the Champions League final. So very close to winning the big one. But I am loving this Brighton team that we have built. Our star last season, Marcus Leonardo, is now being chased by Real Madrid. Probably because he scored 54 goals last season. And a lot of you asked, and there's a big chance, however, that Evan Ferguson could be the one to leave. He is still here though. But he only made 3 starts and scored just 2 goals all season. This is the player who scored 31 league goals aged 18, remember. But anyway, the Champions League run gave us a nice boost in reputation, taking us into the top 10 worldwide. It also did wonders for our finances though, and I never really trust this page. Why is Norwich there? On the outs, Kozlowski didn't want to renew his contract and he joined Leipzig on a free transfer. Incoming though was Madueke, who was transfer listed by Chelsea. He will be a good squad player in rotation and not bad at all for the price of just 10 million. He ain't the only one coming in though, as I'm about to sign a midfielder from Manchester United, but I won't jinx it just yet. We met Southampton in the Community Shield and they split us open within seconds from kickoff to take the lead at Wembley. It took us a quarter of an hour, but eventually we found our feet, and from there we not only managed to equalise, but we started to take control of the game and play like the champions we are, running away with the match with Leonardo getting himself a hat-trick and ending the game 4-1 winners. With our new signing awaiting a work permit, it was already time to start the new league campaign. Our start included 2 of those rich teams on the list, Wolves and Norwich, as well as Man United and Palace. And we began the season very well, stuffing Wolves 6-0. After defeating Norwich with another great result, it was a trip to Old Trafford where Rashford welcomed us by scoring the opener. Thankfully though, the run from Wirtz was found and we rescued a draw. Speaking of Man United, right after the match we signed their player, and it's Renato Sanchez. He hasn't been getting a lot of game time at Manchester United, and I thought he fits our midfield perfectly as a backup, especially for those wing positions, and he only cost £16.5 million. And against Palace he came straight into the starting 11 because of fitness issues on that right midfield slot. Marcus Leonardo of course put us into the lead at the near post with a header, but Michael Elise scored a penalty to equalise. However, what looked like it could have been a terrible back pass ended up starting a wild attack in which Alex Scott scored the winner. A Marcus Leonardo hat-trick helped us beat Aston Villa in a great start to our league campaign. On deadline day though, we say goodbye to a legend as we accept the £30 million bid for McAllister from Newcastle, who is in the last year of his contract. Champions League fixtures are in, and of course, like poetry, our first game is against the winners who beat us in the final and lifting the trophy last season, PSG. And they've just signed Milinkovic-Savic and Rafael Leao to bolster their strengths. And they're managed by Patrick Vieira, by the way. Into September, and against Newcastle, Marcus Leonardo scored on the 19th minute mark. He then doubled our lead 20 minutes later, and he had a chance to get his hat-trick, but missed the penalty. And Newcastle went right up the other end and Pignon scored. Thankfully though, it was the last goal of the game. A trip to Paris next and PSG played through us. A new signing, Milinkovic-Savic's cross came up the back post and Musiala scored. But then we caught SMS out on the ball and a lovely chip over the top found Marcus Leonardo. 1-1. Second half and we looked a much better side and Alex Scott punished the Parisians, giving us the advantage. But of course, PSG got a lucky penalty and Mbappe equalised, and the final score was 2-2. We lost the second Champions League match against Atletico and had Liverpool to play at Anfield next. Once again, we conceded really early on, giving Gavi's goal in the 2nd minute, but then from a corner, Ryder hit a beauty to equalise. And then he set up our 2nd goal as well for Marcus Leonardo. Fonseca gave us a 3-1 advantage going into half-time, and Marcus Leonardo scored his 2nd goal of the match, and we leave Anfield with a 4-1 win. The month following seemed to be going really well, especially in the Premier League. Up until Man City scored and beat us 1-0 at the Etihad. And that was our first loss in the league this season, and we were still trailing Chelsea, who won 10 out of their first 12 games. But Marcus Leonardo is scoring a lot of goals with 15 in the league already, and Florian Wirtz is having a fantastic season too. But our fixtures going into the next couple of months were crucial. Chelsea and Arsenal in the league, with Dortmund and Villarreal the stumbling blocks in the Champions League. And after only narrowly beating Rangers 2-1, Dortmund gave us a visit, and it was our German Florian Wirtz who scored the opening goal against the Germans. However, they have their own superstar German going by the name of Moukoko, who picked up the equaliser just 3 minutes later, leaving us precariously down in 14th place after 5 games in the competition and unable to find any form. But off to Stamford Bridge we go, and we fall behind to an early goal against the league leaders thanks to Raheem Sterling. It isn't long after and he's scoring a 2nd. Marcus Leonardo though, he steps up and gives us hope, making it 2-1. Until somehow Raheem Sterling turns into prime Pirlo and sets up Carlos Soler with one of the best assists I've ever seen on FM. We get a 2nd through single, but we lose our 2nd match in the league. The other 3 matches in the Prem that month all ended up with us retaining 3 points however. And Chelsea only managed to win 1 game, which was against us, and ended up drawing 2 and losing 1 with Liverpool up next. And somehow we jump up into 1st position. But if you think that was good, wait till you see how great our December is. It starts off with a trip to the Emirates and Marcus Leonardo is putting us ahead, followed by some Route 1 attack which forced the Brazilian, who makes no mistake, doubling our lead. And then in the 2nd half, Evan Ferguson appears off the bench and he's bagging a goal. In fact, at the end of this month, Ferguson had clocked up 10 goals in just 3 starts and 10 appearances off the bench. Although 5 of them did come against Watford in a 6-1 away win. But still, good for you, mate. That's not to say that Marcus has stopped scoring, by the way. He picked up 3 goals in a 6-2 victory when we headed to Spain and faced Villarreal in the Champions League, a win we really needed to keep our hopes of the top 8 finish alive. We also played 7 league games in total during December and only conceded 3 goals. 4 clean sheets, including this 3-0 win against West Ham. And we ended up winning all 9 games during December, never even looking like drawing or losing a match. And Liverpool was there, sat shitting themselves for the first game of the new year. Evan Ferguson was the difference maker in this match. He scored both goals in the match while Marcus Leonardo was rested thanks to the amount of fixtures we've played recently over the Christmas period. Real Madrid still wanting him though, and it's easy to see why with his 34 goals in just 29 games so far this season. Back to the Champions League though, and ideally we need 2 wins from 2 against Zagreb and Feyenoord. And we did it without really breaking a sweat at all. 4-0 and 6-0. We struggled more in the League Cup semi-final against Stoke. Thankfully though, we smashed them in the 2nd leg 4-0. Sending us into the final against Liverpool. But before any of that, we did drop points against Leicester despite scoring from kickoff in the 1st half. Leicester striker Ollie Watkins punished us, squeezing in their only shot on target, meaning we dropped 2 points rather badly. However, we are still steamrolling through all the other teams, and we actually find ourselves creating a huge gap at the top of the Premier League, being 9 points clear of Chelsea now. And those 2 Champions League wins means we don't have to play in that drastic playoff. Michael's been a bit quiet this season though, hasn't he? To be honest, I don't think I've really needed him, and then I sold my backup left back on deadline day. But once again, before acquiring Michael's services, my scouts have already found an ideal young replacement in Borisov, who I got from Ludogorets for just £4.2 million, a bargain. And I've also signed Leo Ostergaard on a free transfer for the end of the season, who I think is a fantastic centre-back. In February, there wasn't much we could do to stop Goretzka from scoring for Arsenal. And although we didn't take the 3 points, Marcus Leonardo scoring an equaliser kept the smiles on the fans' faces. Because it was another unbeaten month, including 2 rounds of the FA Cup. And it's on to March with 5 difficult matches, including the Champions League round of 16 and the Cup final. We started the month drawing to Everton because of a 94th minute goal. So we head to Madrid to play Atletico, and we take control of the game, splitting them open to find Marcus Leonardo. I felt very confident in the second half when a deep cross was met by Schurz for the second. We dominated the whole fixture, in fact, winning 4-0 in the second leg. So it's off to Wembley for the League Cup final. Once again, we love an early goal, but this time Leonardo supplied the assist for Thuram. Trent Alexander-Arnold is good at free kicks though, and it's 1-1. And Liverpool started better after half-time than us, and suddenly we find ourselves 2-1 down. Not good. Until Marcus Leonardo decided to get involved in the goals himself, and we took it to extra time. And we win the League Cup for the second time when Fabian Ryder scores the winner, making it 3-2 to Brighton. We are on fire right now and even knocked Chelsea out of the FA Cup. One trophy down this season, we are top of the league, Arsenal in the quarterfinals of the Champions League and chasing the FA Cup with Newcastle to play next. However, for the first time in forever, we record 2 back-to-back 0-0s against Spurs and Arsenal. Thankfully, with Arsenal being the first leg of the Champions League, Saka also missed a penalty. Bouncing back though, beating Chelsea in the league, who still sit in second thanks to Arda Güler's man-of-the-match performance. He picked up the assist for the first goal and bagged himself just 15 minutes later in a 3-1 win. Our performance in the second leg against Arsenal was exactly what we needed though to gain our confidence back. A solid result, winning 3-0 with some good set-piece goals and a chance to rest players early thanks to 2 goals by the 50th minute. Our run from now to the end of the season is brutal though. Look at this, Newcastle in the FA Cup, next PSG with Manchester clubs either side as we try to secure the league again, and Palace near the end of the season. However, Chelsea keep dropping points and we've pretty much got the league in the bag with 2 games in hand and 8 points clear. Marcus Leonardo has so far scored 45 goals this season, but it's good to see the supporting cast in Ferguson and Burt's both on 18 as well. Ferguson actually scored 4 goals in the Blackburn game. In a solid 2-1 win as well against Manchester City, we gave ourselves a huge boost. Because mathematically, with that, we've won the league title with 4 games left. And in the FA Cup, we fell behind 2-0 to Newcastle, but somehow we clawed our way back into the game, with Thuram scoring 2 goals to level the scores before Florian Wirtz was played through to put us into another cup final. It's PSG in the semi-final of the Champions League, and it's a chance to make it an all-English final next. We definitely started the better team, and Marcus Leonardo cushioned the ball and half-volleyed it early into the bottom corner. Musiala hounded the ball off single though, and then Mbappe looked offside, but VAR claimed the goal stands. And it was the luck that PSG needed, and it drove them to push for a second, which they found, again for Mbappe. And just like last season, I began to worry this would be it, and Hakimi smashed in a third just after half-time. Mbappe then got a chance for a hat-trick from the spot, but Kornaceki saved a penalty, and the momentum completely shifted. Because minutes later, a corner, Marcus Leonardo puts us a goal away from what could have been 4-1 down. And then a clearance is headed down and Almada is through. It looks like he wastes the opportunity, but instead his rocket is an equaliser and the first leg finishes 3-3. The second leg finished 0-0 at half-time, so into extra time, and Kimmich was found with way too much space and he gave PSG the advantage. The minute later, and we attack, looking to find Ferguson, but the ball breaks and Fabian Ryder is there to slot home another equaliser. But from the kickoff of our goal, we are through once again, and there's Ferguson who gets it this time and puts us into our second Champions League final in 2 years, where Manchester City await us in the final after beating Liverpool 4-1 on aggregate. Ironically, it was Crystal Palace who gave us the most difficult game heading towards both cup finals, drawing 1-1. But we end the Premier League season on 94 points, 20 points more than Chelsea in second place. The FA Cup is a trophy that Brighton have never won, and neither have our opponents today, Brentford. So whoever wins this match lifts the trophy for the very first time, and I fancy our chances because Marcus Leonardo put us 2-0 up. And just like he has been doing all season, Evan Ferguson comes off the bench, no nonsense, scores a third, and Brighton are your FA Cup winners. But it's our second Champions League final and Florian Wirtz is out injured, so I resort back to Mitoma in that attacking midfield role. He deserves it after what he's done for the club, with him and Caicedo being the only 2 players from the original team I took over that's still in the starting 11. So it's Sergio Conceição's Manchester City team who line up in a 4-4-2 with Erling Haaland leading the line, the Premier League's top scorer by the way, and he has 53 goals this season so far. And as the teams at the Stadio Olimpico Stadium in Rome head out onto the pitch, the one question on everybody's lips: Why are both teams wearing blue? Well, the deadlock was finally broken and it took into the second half with very smart thinking from a free kick. A chance to double our lead was missed when Ryder's penalty was saved though, and we tried to work the ball back but Matoma's shot was blocked and eventually the ball was played out for a corner. But from that corner, Leonardo scores again and it's 2-0. And Man City had nothing. The clock was run down and Brighton, in the second time of asking, are champions of European football. 2 Champions League finals in a row. Quadruple winners this season. What a team we have built. Winning all 4 trophies as well as the Community Shield. Complete domination. I absolutely love this squad. It took 7 seasons, but without spending no more than £22 million on a player, we won the Champions League. Never in one of these series have we dominated a season like we have done here though. And just in case people want to have a look or continue the journey, I'll stick the save file on Patreon under the £5 tier on patreon.com/OmegaLukeGaming. And as we look through the profiles of our heroes of this Brighton save, with this series coming to an end, the question everybody will have is, what is next, Luke? Well, I have an idea, but I think I might need your help. Because I need suggestions for a starting team in the top 5 leagues for Glory Hunter.